Well, one of the most exciting new Indian airlines is Akasa, and we've got a very special guest with us, the founder of Akasa, Vinay Dubey. And we're going to be talking a little bit about fleet expansion in Akasa, particularly a few days after Air India announced that mega purchase worth $70 to $80 billion of 470 aircraft plus options. Therefore, Akasa is an interesting story because they are expected to announce a deal with more than 100 aircraft in the next little while. They're also setting new benchmarks in the aviation sector. Mr. Dubey, thanks very much for being with us. The Akasa story, it's a bright streak across the sphere of Indian aviation. It's a new airline, very, very new, but you seem to be meeting your targets in terms of the number of aircraft that you're putting into service. So let's talk about that first. What were your initial targets and how have you met them?
So thank you, Vishnu. I appreciate it. Our initial target that we announced maybe about a year ago was to get delivery of 18 aircraft by March of 2023. And I'm happy to announce that we took delivery of the 18th aircraft in late February of 2023. So we've certainly met that target. We have crossed the 1 million passenger mark on the 22nd of June. We were happy to service our millionth customer. We are now flying to 23 routes. We're selling over 110 flights a day. We've got 2,000 employees. These are all targets that we set a year ago, and we're very, very happy that we've achieved them. But Vishnu, I will say that...
This is unprecedented, Vinay, isn't it? Very few airlines in aviation, perhaps no other airline, has achieved this speed of growth. Is that right?
That is correct. Unfortunately, there is no Guinness Book of World Records category for this. But we've asked a lot of people with a lot of gray hair if they've ever come across any other airline that has gone from 0 to 20 in the span of 12 months, and nobody has been able to identify anyone else. And so what we're saying is that in the 120-year history of global aviation, since the Wright brothers launched the first powered flight in 1903, we think we're the first that has grown at this pace. But Vishnu, I will tell you that growing fast is one thing, but the manner in which you grow is also equally important. And we're very, very happy to say that we're getting excellent consumer feedback. Our customers talk about the Akasa experience in very warm and welcoming terms. And in the 3 months that we have been monitored by the Indian government, the Ministry of Civil Aviation and the DGCA for on-time performance, which is December, January and February, we have closed at either number 1 or number 2 in the industry. So it's also the manner in which we have grown that is extremely comforting.
Vinay, what about future orders? We've seen and heard of the big Air India deal. I don't expect you to grow quite as large as that. You're still a much smaller company, obviously, but there will be mega orders from Akasa as well, right?
There is. We thought 72 is a big enough order, but that will take us only through to March of 2027. We've said that we're going to place a significantly larger order before the end of 2023. People have asked, what does that mean? And for the moment, we've just teased them by saying it's going to be 3 digits, which obviously leaves a very large range between 100 and 999. But yes, I don't think people should be expecting 500-600 because we are a smaller company. So our rate of growth will be larger, but our aircraft order is more than likely not going to be larger.
So how many aircraft are you ordering?
At this point, that's all I'm going to say, Vishnu. It's significantly large, 3 digits. Bear with us.
So 3 digits more than 100, right? Well more than 100. Would it be fair for me to report that?
That would be fair for you to report.
So, all right.
Yes.
So, well more than 100 aircraft, and you're going to place that order this year, right?
That's correct. Calendar year 2023.
Right. And it's all going to be of the Boeing 737 MAX family?
No, at this point, we're not yet ready to commit to that. What we've said is that it's going to be a narrow body order, but we're looking at both manufacturers.
And you haven't finalized a choice between the 2 manufacturers, Boeing and Airbus, have you?
Well, we certainly have an order for 72 Boeing 737 MAX that we're extremely happy with. We're grateful for the way in which Boeing has partnered with us.
Yeah.
It has helped launch Akasa, and we're very, very thankful. So we consider them a very deep and strategic partner. But for the next order, we will be open to considering both Boeing as well as Airbus.
All right. Now, the other big issue, of course, is Pilots, where do you get so many pilots? It's almost as if we have more planes than pilots, which is a bizarre situation in Indian aviation to be in. Not just talking about Akasa.
Yeah, I think, Vishnu, I'd like to correct that because where we get pilots is all our pilots. Remember, all pilots that are required to support Akasa's growth, every one of them has come from India.
Right.
India has a lot of pilots. We export pilots to the world. But also keep in mind that, in the calendar years 2019, 20, 21, and 22, these 4 years where, Indian aviation as a whole did not see any growth. In fact, as of today, we're probably flying, less total passengers across domestic and international than we flew in 2019 or even late 2018. So in this period of time, I think DGCA provided licenses to somewhere between 3 and 3,500 pilots. Those 3 to 3,500 pilots are on the bench today. So when you say, where are we going to get pilots from? Well, we've got a very significant backlog of pilots that need employment that, people like us and hopefully our colleagues in Indian aviation are happy to employ. So we're very excited about the prospect of growing. I think what separates Akasa is the fact that we've got such high growth compared to other people. And I think what separates Akasa in terms of attracting pilots is that we're, probably the most employee-centric company, certainly the most employee-centric company here in India. And I think we make a great home for our pilots.
What about flying abroad? What are your plans as far as that is concerned?
So we would like to fly internationally, and we will at this point have plans of flying internationally before the end of 2023. We don't have a destination in mind because it will require permissions, government permissions. You've got to get route authority before you can decide that, and so it's not just in our hands. But by the end of 2023, we will launch our first international flight. Very exciting.
Are you looking at a future where there would be even wide-body aircraft in your fleet?
Not at this point. So this significantly larger, much larger than 100 aircraft order that we have just discussed is going to be a narrow-body order. So at this point, we're not looking at wide bodies.
You would be looking at ranges, of course. I asked this because Indigo is flying with their A321 XLRs yet to arrive. They'd be flying fairly robust ranges. They'd be serving destinations in Europe as well. Is that something that you want to get in on as well?
It just depends on what the circumstances are that we get from manufacturers on those highly specialized aircraft. I think once you get to a certain scale, it is you can be a little more open to it. So at this point, we're not ruling it out. It just depends on, like I said, what the manufacturers put on the table for us for these specialized aircraft.
And just in terms of airport, another question on the 737 MAX, which just sort of comes to mind. Are you looking at the 200 variant? The reason I ask is because more capacity, which comes with less range, but it's a larger aircraft. Does that work for you?
That's right. And so we have ordered this larger aircraft. So in our initial 72 aircraft order that is already placed, we've got 19 of them that are the Dash 8 variety, and we've got 63 of them or 53 of them that are of the 8-200 larger variety with 197 seats. We think it's a very, very exciting aircraft. It's very good. The range degradation is not significant. And so we're extremely, excited about the prospect of what this aircraft means for us.
I think the concern for passengers is that because that 200 variant can seat close to 200 passengers, the question is, would you do that? Because, in domestic sectors, legroom is important. That is a priority for passengers. Less of a priority sometimes for airlines, which is why I ask.
Yeah, so I will say that our 8-200 comes with 197 seats, not 200. And I can also tell you that if you compare the legroom available on the 197 seat configured aircraft for Akasa, you will have more seat pitch than you get on a 310-20 Neo with 186 seats, which is the predominant aircraft that is flying in India today. So there should be no degradation of comfort for consumers. And when you add the USB, when you add the device holder, when you add the new aircraft with the pressure and the noise and the airflow and the larger overhead bins, with all other aspects of the Akasa service culture, I think is going to be, one heck of an experience for our consumers.
Final question, airport infrastructure in India, and secondly, the variable of aviation turbine fuel. Your industry just works on this, the variable fuel cost. Let's talk about fuel first, and that's a huge problem. It goes up and down, and then you get into this mega competitive state with other airlines where your profit margins are so slim that your long-term survival of every airline actually becomes questioned. We've seen what's happened with some of the other airlines. So therefore, how do you, in your thinking, rationalize the volatility in aviation turbine fuel in India and the high costs?
Look, Vishnu, we really don't lose sleep. There are plenty of things I lose sleep over, but the cost of aviation turbine fuel is not something I control. So what we focus on at Akasa is controlling the variables that will then allow us to compete, whether fuel is at $50 a barrel for Brent or at $90 a barrel for Brent or higher. And what we can control is the type of aircraft that we get. And so we've got what we think is the most futuristic aircraft. The MAX, is new age technology, which is also exciting, when it comes to our pilots, is we're equipping them with a skill set for the future. But as far as fuel efficiency is concerned, this is the most fuel efficient aircraft that there is. And 100% of our aircraft are these fuel efficient aircraft. So if there's anybody that can really, thrive through the volatility of fuel, I think it's Akasa. And that's, part of what we focus on in terms of our strategy.
One final question. Just two or 3 days back, the new Air India MD told me that there isn't a day that passes when some incident of poor conduct or poor behavior by passengers is not reported. Now, Air India is a much larger airline, but I think the larger question exists: passenger behavior on board flights, the challenges which your crew face on board. It's an industry-wide concern. Do you share those concerns?
Well, absolutely. I mean, we have zero tolerance, as far as unruly behavior is concerned. I mean, this is something that could affect, safety, and we have absolutely zero tolerance for it. And so I think it's incumbent on all of us to keep this topic, top of mind. But it's also incumbent on all of us to help educate people that are traveling for the first time. It's not something to look down upon. It's something to partner with other players in the industry. It's something to partner with, people like yourself, because, as a country, we take great pride, and as an airline, we take great pride in serving people that are flying for the first time. But people that are flying for the first time might not necessarily be, completely familiar with the etiquette, and the behavior that is, expected as far as, safety of themselves and their fellow passengers is concerned. And so, I think this is something that we absolutely share, and it's something that we think we're part of the solution for as well.
Before I let you go, Akasa, among other Indian airlines of late, is and will be a huge employment generator. You bring in people into the workforce, not just pilots. So once you actually start receiving your aircraft beyond the 72, and would you have a rough idea of how many people across the board you'd be employing in, let's say, 5-6 years from now? How big a company will Akasa be?
Sure. So I think you've got these rule of thumbs, Vishnu, that you can look at roughly 100 employees per aircraft. It's a rough rule of thumb. So we're at 2,000 employees today. We're at 18 aircraft on our way to 20. So this rule of thumb is not too far off. By March of 2027, we'll have 72 aircraft in our fleet, and so 7,200 or 7,500 is not an unreasonable forecast.
Right. Well, that's a fairly significant number. Vinay, it's been wonderful speaking to you. Thank you so much for joining us. One of India's newest and most exciting airlines, breaking records in terms of delivery of aircraft and operationalizing them. And it's going to be a huge employer in the future. And I think in the big headline out of that interview is expect Akasa to place an order by the end of this year of significantly more than 100 aircraft. And again, there's no country in the world at the moment which is placing this number of orders. So that's something certainly to look forward to. Vinay, we're out of time. Thanks so much for being with us. Thank you very much indeed.
Appreciate it. Thank you.